Welcome to Google Ads Decoded, practical talk to help you navigate change, be in the know about new and upcoming features, and ultimately drive more value from Google Ads. I'm your host, Ginny Marvin, Google Ads product liaison. In each episode, we'll hear from the people behind Google Ads, share actionable insights, and answer top questions from the ads community. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, let's dive in. In earlier episodes, we've talked about PMax channel reporting, PMax, and demand gen. And there have been many questions about how, if, when to take the Power Pack approach and what role each campaign type can play in your strategy. So in this episode, we're going to talk with a broader view at how advertisers should be thinking about this campaign portfolio, creatives considerations. I chatted with Sylvanus and Charles Boyd, who've been driving product development in these areas, in a wide-ranging conversation with them both. So I hope you enjoy it and stick around for a Q&A from the ads community. Welcome, Sylvanus and Charles. Really excited for this conversation. And we'll kick off. Sylvanus, can you introduce yourself and talk about what you work on at Google?
Sure. So I'm Sylvanus. You may remember me from GML. I've been at Google over 9 years, and I work on search ads automation. Previously had done things like responsive search ads. Longtime Googler, been in ads the whole time. And I'm really excited as we continue to work on how automation and AI can drive performance for advertisers.
And Charles, welcome. And can you tell us about what you're working on at Google?
I'm Charles. I work on AI Creative at Google Ads, and we're really excited about how AI Creative can help customers meet all of the depth and breadth of assets that are needed to run effective campaigns across a variety of Google campaign types.
Right. And there's so much happening in this space. So let's dive in. Sylvanus, you mentioned GML. So you shared on stage at GML that it's in with the Power Pack. The search with AI Max, PMax, and demand gen. And so we're going to dive into a bit of what that looks like. But first, you also mentioned the PMax quality improvements. More than 90 were made last year. That drove an increase in conversions and conversion value of 10%, or more than 10%. A couple of years ago, when I was at Search Engine Land, I was talking to a Googler who mentioned big model improvements that have been made to broad match. And I asked why Google hadn't been talking about that work externally more. So, of course, we always have a lot of externally visible experiments and launches, but there's always a lot happening behind the scenes. Any sort of behind the scenes insights into how the teams go about testing and launching ongoing quality improvements that may not be super visible to users?
Sure. So I'd say let's start with the bottom line is that what it means for advertisers is that you get more value out of your PMax campaign without having to do anything, right? That's the whole point of these like ongoing quality launches. And as you say, like quality is foundational to everything we do. So it's always happening. We don't usually talk about each of the individual launches together. I think GML was a moment to just kind of highlight the breadth and the work that is going on across multiple channels, across targeting improvements, creative formats improvements, and bidding launches. And all of these are centered around advertiser value metrics and specifically measuring the impact it has on performance max campaigns. When you think about like how we do this, it's somebody might say art and science, right? It often starts with some kind of insight, whether that's qualitative feedback from advertisers that we're hearing, or sometimes a data-driven insight, or both. That insight is usually like the first nugget of, hey, there's a problem or something we could do to be better. And you take that insight, we form some hypotheses, and when we get some intuition about why is this problem happening, we'll look at real examples. Like users might see different ads or how it's impacting an advertiser setup, and we'll try to make it go from a hypothetical problem to here's a real use case or hero motivation of where the problem is and what it looks like. And then, we're starting to explore different solutions and try different approaches. We're very data-driven, analyzing the results, even running counterfactual experiments on the back end about what these changes could happen or what it could look like if they were launched. And things that are looking promising, we can graduate to full launch, right? And those just continue to ramp up. And like you said, most of these launches happen in the back end.
I say this a lot is if you've tried feature a tool campaign type at some point and didn't work, this is some of the reasons why don't give up or come back to something 6 months down the road to give another shot because of the constant improvements. I don't know, Charles, if you want to add anything.
Yeah. Sylvanus was talking about how data science plays a really big role in the way that we do experiments internally, and how the metrics that we look at and we analyze when we're making changes to the way that ads serve or targeting works is all about driving value for our advertisers. And that's the key metric that we're looking at when we're making these changes. And it really mirrors how we encourage our advertisers to think about testing things, testing creative or testing campaign types, is to try things and try them multiple times over time around and be data driven about the results. And a creative is one of those ways that you can really feed the system with a lot of information or a lot of content to test and then draw insights from some of the results.
I do think having insight into what the teams are working on, particularly from a quality standpoint, is really helpful. So, what did we learn from advertisers who used search and PMax together as the power pairing? What did we learn?
What we saw was like, in general, when people or advertisers were combining these two campaigns, they were able to reach wider audiences than they had if they were just doing one by themselves. Overall, it was successful, and we look at success as like advertiser value, right? Performance and aggregate, and we really were trying to get advertisers to make sure they had coverage and the best of Google AI advancements. And so back then, it was, if you wanted truly the best of Google performance and AI, you actually had to use PMax. And also remember, we're always listening to feedback. We heard some feedback specifically about like sometimes cross-channel solution isn't the best fit for everyone. There are many advertisers, it is a good fit, and many advertisers have a PMax strategy, but there is so much also spend already in search campaigns. And when we heard that feedback, we said our goal is still to deliver the best value for advertisers, regardless of where they are. So let's bring some of the best, that same best performance that we also had in PMax to search campaigns as well. And that's what ended up becoming like the genesis of the AI Max for search campaigns, right? And that was listening to feedback about advertisers that maybe cross-channel wasn't right for them at that time. So let's bring the solution to them. And then we also got feedback about even the control, even within search campaigns, like we're hearing, hey, but I want more control over how campaigns work. And so looking specifically at how advertisers, for example, were using branded keywords and why they were using branded keywords, and realizing we can pull out, like the core concept is I want my traffic to really include the brand terms. And rather than having to like find all the permutations of dealing with that in the keywords and managing it there, we built a specific brand control, right? Just the building brand inclusions and exclusions features, right? And again, that's another example of like listening to advertisers specifically about how they use our products and trying to iterate to find a new solution that meets their needs.
Yeah, speaking of feedback, like we're listening to a lot of the customers as they're using AI Max and asset optimization also in PMax, and they're telling us that they want more ways to provide input to the system, more ways to provide input specifically on assets. And so we're exploring and building out ways for customers to do just that. And they tell us that they have certain guidelines that they want to provide around the way that text assets, for example, are created. And we're building out ways for customers to do that and thinking about that as well.
And so kind of building on brand guidelines can help enable in PMax, and then essentially helping advertisers get more signal to what matters to them from a creative tech standpoint. That's great. And from a creative perspective, I know you just talked a little bit about this, Charles, but thinking about the kind of either or both and, because obviously we have a lot of customers that are using PMax and search, and thinking about just strategic ways to use those together. Some are saying, let ad rank decide which which campaign is gonna serve. Others are saying, I want to be very much more surgical about what my search campaigns are dedicated for versus my PMax campaigns. Just anything else you want to mention or say about from a creative standpoint, considerations, any tips that you want to add there?
I think it just goes back to a culture of testing thing. Looking at AI Max will really also help you expand and find things that you maybe haven't, or niches that you haven't thought about or found yourself. And we encourage you to also test AI Max, right? So you can see the like incrementality that's going to bring, and you can use those learnings and bring it forward to additional campaigns that you might have.
Great. And yeah, so we're kind of getting at the power pack, how advertisers should think about the role of AI Max for search, PMax, and now demand gen together, and how they should think about these campaign types, serving specific needs, but also how they can complement each other. So I don't know if Sylvanus, you want to talk a little bit about the complementary nature of these three campaign types.
Sure. And our general guidance, right, is for advertisers who are using both search and PMax, right, which was the power pair, you should continue to invest in PMax if you're using both, and test AI Max for search campaigns. And speaking of that, which we also talked about, if you're using AI Max, you should also, again, test and learn. AI Max, we think, works really well with smart bidding exploration. So combining that with AI Max, the reach and the performance that you can get, but also on certain queries where maybe you weren't winning on before, allow you to test and get better performance even on those as well. So together, we think there's even more value there. And, if other guidance is, if you're already on PMax and you're using PMax to buy your search inventory, you should just keep using PMax. The whole point about when we highlighted these three campaigns is we want advertisers to focus on choice and what works best for them and their strategy. So if you're already on PMax and you're using that fully to get your search inventory, we're not saying you need to then go also do AI Max. You should just continue to use PMax and you'll get the benefits. If you're using PMax, we do recommend people use search themes, right, and URL expansion to get the best of the PMax version. But
There's big news there too, right? Like,
go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead and tell them. Break news.
Yeah, we're expanding the number of search themes you can add up to 50. So that provides, again, it's like more ways to provide input into Google AI.
I just want to take a quick second to make sure that we define search themes and how advertisers should be thinking about using those versus how they think about how keywords work. So, Charles, can you just talk a little bit more about what the point of search themes is and how they work?
Yeah, so search themes are a signal that you're providing into the system as it learns. And so you'll want to provide it the types of things your customers search for when they're looking for your business or what you're selling. But it's like a helpful incremental signal into AI as it begins to explore. So maybe you're telling it about something it may not know initially, just based off of your website and your headlines about, that your customers are searching for these types of things when they're looking for your business. And so it will begin to explore and find those queries based off the search themes that you provide and other things that it learns. And it'll learn along the way which types of searches work well and find new ones too.
And there's new reporting, or relatively new reporting, for understanding how your search themes are driving that incremental traffic as well. So that, I thought, was very, very helpful to actually have that visibility into what your search themes are doing and how they're, or if they're contributing or not. And if they're not, think about swapping those out and trying something new. Thinking about creative, and obviously we're talking about this today. It's a critical component. Relevance and intent. There have been a lot of updates, including new AI-driven asset generation capabilities, which are very exciting, but also require somewhat of a mind shift for advertisers. So love to hear a little bit about the updates, and also if you can help share and talk sort of what the role is for the advertiser when using these new capabilities and anything they should keep in mind?
Yeah. So as you're creating campaigns across Google Ads, whether that's, search, PMax, demand gen, the Power Pack, you'll see creative capabilities directly in the flows where you're creating the campaign. And this is to really help inspire you or help you fill gaps in your creative. Maybe you have some ideas or some creative offline that you're bringing in, but you can maybe you see something that Google AI suggests you hadn't thought of before around a new headline or maybe some imagery that you hadn't thought of before. And so we really encourage customers and advertisers to try to reach that excellent ad strength, which is it's like a diagnostic measure of, are you providing the system with the variety of content that it really needs to optimize?
Ad strength is one of those things that comes up occasionally. So I'm so glad you said that it's a diagnostic tool. I just want to underscore that it's not something that's used in the auction. And this comes up occasionally.
Exactly.
So it's really a tool for you to understand how your ads are optimized for optionality.
All about providing that variety needed to test. And so it's a tool to understand, are you providing that variety that's really needed or ideal for the system to be able to learn and test? That's kind of how we think about it.
Yeah.
And we're trying to provide tools in Google Ads to help customers meet that variety requirement. So I mentioned suggested headlines, but there's new tools that are coming out right now in the UI. So for example, in July, we upgraded a lot of the image generation capabilities across the platform. So we've had generative image capabilities in the UI for a little while, but customers have told us that it doesn't depict their exact products, right? If you sell headphones, for example, you need to show your headphones, maybe on a person or someone wearing your clothes, the clothes that you sell. And so in July, we launched a new capability that's available regardless of what campaign type you're creating, where you can use your products, whether they're from a product feed or from your website or that you upload, to make new imagery for your campaigns that depict those exact products. And so this is really cool because it helps, again, build out that variety of assets. Like if you only have an asset on a white background or an image on a white background, we would really encourage you to also, in addition, don't replace it, but also try one that's more of like a lifestyle image. And that variety is really what's going to help drive the performance of that campaign. And these types of tools really help you do that and do that effectively. And so that's an example of the types of the new capabilities in Google Ads that can really help drive that performance.
Can you just talk a little bit about when and where advertisers have the ability to inform what their generative assets look like?
Yeah. So it's something we hear a lot of advertisers tell us is that, they have brand requirements, or maybe you're in a regulated industry and you want your assets to look or feel a certain way, and you want to have control over how your brand is represented online. And so for all of the tools that are available in the UI, you can review and adjust all of the creative that's created there. And then for the ones that are created more on the fly, or let's say you're running Performance Max, and you know that you're going to get ads that are rendered live or to edit impression, you can now provide inputs like color or font as brand guidelines to help influence the way that your ads appear. And as I mentioned earlier, we're working on new ways to provide additional inputs on the types of content that are created, whether you're using Performance Max and have text optimization on, or AI Max in search.
Great. And also, I just want to underscore that because your landing pages, your provided assets, your keywords all help inform what those generative assets look like, and what that messaging, that having updated and accurate landing pages, websites, really great descriptive brand representative assets, all of those are going to help feed into and kind of inform and make your generative assets better and more effective.
Exactly. All of the asset generation capabilities in Google Ads, whether it's in construction or editing or in asset optimization, are based off of the inputs you provide.
Great. All right. We've had a lot of asks for asset level reporting, and that is currently rolling out. Correct me on the timing, but it's rolling out for PMax search and display. So that's RSAs. How should advertisers think about using this new reporting and to know what's working and what to optimize? I don't know.
Oh yeah,
Sylvanus,
this has been a direct response.
Right. Yes,
As you know, Jenny.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a
been a
direct
really
response to the feedback that we've got from advertisers that they want more granular insights into what's resonating with their customers. And we recommend, again, advertisers adopt a framework of testing and learning and iteration. And so you can use the metrics that are available now or rolling out to identify the top performing assets or what's resonating using data-backed evidence. But especially for the poor performers, the goal isn't necessarily to get rid of them, but to replace them. So you can use the learnings from the top performers to identify the weaker ones or how to replace them. And I think of it sort of like when I use AI tools, like I use Gemini, use sort of daily for work. The more content I give it about what I'm trying to do, the better it gives me a result back. And it's the same way for assets.
It's a good reminder, right? Is like, just remember that when you see asset level stats, you can't just compare to say that, well, because one specific asset has a really high, conversion rate, I can just remove all the ones that have lower and that one will always serve. You're thinking about your coverage first, and some assets can be really good for specific segments, but don't necessarily then delete everything else to say, well, only keep the one or two best assets, because we've seen time and time again when that's happened, you really shrink your overall coverage and your total aggregate conversions start going down. I think the two kind of high level buckets are that asset could appeal to a very specific or smaller niche or audience. And so when it shows, it's really performant and valuable, but doesn't mean that that's relevant for all of the traffic. And the other times is it might just be there's another asset that the system prefers over that asset, because what you can't see behind the scenes, right, is the system evaluates all assets, right? And it both scores them individually and in combinations, and essentially is trying to rank order what is predicted best performance of the different combinations that it could show for a given query. And then you can't see necessarily, well, what if something goes forward and it's either just wasn't predicted performance or went forward and it lost auction and you couldn't see that. Might be starting to dig into kind of Charles's point, like, well, why? What segment is it good for? What can I learn from that? Is there intuition about the kind of way we're messaging? And can we use that for other parts of our campaigns or other parts of our ads to like say, hey, that works really well in this one spot. Can we replicate that for other audiences? Don't look at it like something necessarily is wrong or that I can just remove all the others and that it'll fix it.
Great. I want to switch gears a bit to video. Video obviously is playing an increasingly important role in marketer strategies, and it is something that's been out of reach for many. We're seeing all these new tools coming and making it much more accessible. So what's some of the creative guidance for those who are relatively new to using video as part of their creative strategies, and how do you get the most out of Google's specific Gen AI video tools?
Yeah, we encourage advertisers to add videos to any campaign that supports video because it allows you to extend your reach, and the bidding systems are going to, particularly in Performance Max, it's going to look for finding the right customer at the right time. So maybe the customer sees the video first and engages directly or does a direct response on that, or maybe they see the video first and complete their journey on search. But the the systems are smart to be able to optimize across channels and across asset types. And if you don't have a video, you're really missing out on a very large portion of reaching customers that you could see more conversions at a similar conversion value. And so, yes, we strongly encourage having a video. Google AI will automatically learn the portions of that video that work really well and serve that to to your potential customers.
Many more options. One of the things I'll just sort this out. So I've seen early reaction to as people are getting channel reporting in Performance Max. I've seen some commentary on, well, I have a video in my campaign, but it's not driving any conversions, which I can see in my channel reporting. And so what would your guidance be? Does that mean video's not?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's similar to how we were talking about text assets before. It's one of those things where it may be driving incremental conversions that you may not be able to see. So like I mentioned earlier, you may be reaching customers that you otherwise might not have. There's some incremental conversions there that the bidding system is seeing. But beyond that, we're soon rolling out the ability for you to directly test that. And so if you want to A/B test what adding a video does to your campaign, you'll be able to do that directly. And so that and some additional experimentation tools are coming soon across campaign types.
Yeah, I think it just highlights that, Charles, multiple times we've been mentioning this test and learn mindset. Like, I think that's critical, especially the speed of change, pace of change going on. Like even the Power Pack, right? Even with the Power Pack, when you have PMax, you have Search, the AI Max, you have Demand Gen, right? They're all options. Right? These are options that will figure out what works best for your business, your strategies. It's all about like you have to test and learn and see what works for you. If you're already deeply invested in PMax, you can stay on PMax and get the best of Google AI. If you're deeply in search and you want to get the best of Google AI, we're like, turn on AI Max with search campaigns and test smart bidding exploration at the same time. If you want to go beyond search and really tap into like people who are still exploring or discovering, that's Demand Gen. You're both creating and converting users even when they're not searching for you, and you really want to focus on like visual first and build out a social strategy. So these are all like options, right? And the only way you can figure out what's best works for you is like test and learn and at scale. And so we continue to work on that.
Right. All right. And let's close this out. Looking 3 to 5 years into the future, AI continues to evolve, become more deeply embedded in campaign platforms. What is a piece of advice you give to practitioners as they think about this shift and how to strategize, interact with their campaigns to improve performance? Again, it's sort of the question about control versus making sure that we're giving the systems flexibility.
I think with the speed that the world is changing, you need to be nimble and adopt like a constant testing, iteration, and learning mindset. And we don't know what the world will look like, I think, in 3 to 5 years, but I think what will be constant is that it will change and that we're going to need to learn and iterate and adapt. And you can see that in Google Ads and the way that you provide assets and the way that we're testing different campaign types. And I would also say like how you're feeding in data to the system really helps AI optimize towards what's most valuable to you.
Charles hit it on the head. I was thinking very similar, and even I'm building on his last point about like feeding in the data. Like, so we're clearly in a new age, in this AI age. Again, it's pretty hard to imagine 3 to 5 years out how exactly things will be, given how fast things have changed just the past 3 years. So, but the thing you think about when this shift is like, with AI getting better and what its capabilities are, like, how do we shift our mindset? There's this analogy I kind of liked. It was like, think about being less of the pilot and more of the architect and kind of the strategist of your campaign or your business strategy, right? Like in the past, I'm like, you had to be there turning every knob and try to find every efficiency you could because like no one else would do it, right? And yes, machine learning had gotten better, but now we're kind of in an age you're seeing how fast things are increasing. So like, if I were to try to get ahead of that, I'm not going to try to beat the AI forever that, I can turn the knobs faster, I can test quicker, or I can analyze and synthesize the results as much. But I can, what Charles said, how do you become the architect who's like master all the inputs needed so that AI is only as good as the data that it gets? So if you're thinking about, well, what is the right data we're feeding in? Is this the best, highest quality data for the AI to then like make its predictions, optimize the targeting and the creative and the bidding? So you spend a lot more time up front of making sure those inputs are great. And honestly, it goes back to like, even internally, quality is everything. So we said how good those inputs are and the outputs. You have both quality inputs and the right outputs and quality that you're measuring the other end. I feel like that is the future. And so there's more that advertisers can like get into that mindset sooner, the better prepared they will be as these shifts happen. And the shifts might become really quick, and they might happen faster than we can even anticipate.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think also there's always this question gets posed as, are we losing control? And we've been on this trajectory for many years. Smart bidding, fraud match, RSAs. So even though the AI acceleration is here and it shows no sign of stopping, marketers have been on this trajectory of realigning how they engage with their campaigns and what campaign management looks like. So I think, to both of your points, I think we're just going to see that the inputs and the analysis and setting up those tests, having the right data, really understanding your brand and what sets your brand apart, and making sure all of those assets that you have direct control of, whether that's you're working with landing page teams, your content teams, you're working with your data teams, your finance teams, bringing that all together, and you get to sort of be this very important point person for driving business outcomes.
I thought it was well said. It's almost like sometimes it's hard to predict it, but like think of less as the controls going away as that controls may shift because the control plane and the user, the user experiences are changing. Because the world is changing. When you think about, well, we try to go back to, well, what is like the business use case that someone is trying to get to? And then, part of our job working with advertisers in the community and getting the feedback is, well, how can we evolve those controls to meet their needs? But the goal is still to provide the controls that meet business outcomes or business use cases that need to be done. It just might look a little different. Maybe match types, are less of a focus because we've shifted more to an AI Max world or PMax world where keywords are not as present. But there is still, how do I control my targeting? How do I just make sure it aligns with my brand guide, who they want our ads to show up to, and to any regulatory or business like requirements we have.
Yeah. I used to say control looks different in an automated world, and I would say control looks different in an AI powered world. But I think, this is very important to get in that mindset of what the role of the marketer and advertiser looks like now in campaign management. So thank you both. This is a really great conversation. Thanks so much for joining us.
Of course, it's great speaking with you, Jenny, as always.
Yep. Thanks for having us.
Sylvanus's analogy of the airline pilot reminded me of Fred Valaise's doctor pilot teacher analogy in his first book called Digital Marketing in an AI World. And especially if you've been in this field for a while, being successful with AI and automation in Google Ads does require a mindset shift. And I pulled a couple of books from the stack behind me to recommend. One is Fred Valaise's second book, Unleveling the Playing Field. And disclosure, I did write the foreword for this. And then the other one I recommend is Join or Die by Patrick Gilbert. And they are a few years old, but I think especially helpful just to get a reframed mindset for working with automation, getting a better understanding for how these systems work, and then underscores how long we've actually been on this trajectory. So it's now time for Q&A, and here are a couple of recent questions we've gotten on bidding from the ads community. Question 1. When should I set a CPA or ROAS target? All right, so if you're using maximize conversion value bidding strategies without a target, they're designed to get as many conversions or conversion value within your budget. So they're really appropriate if you have a fixed budget for your campaign or portfolio strategy. But setting a CPA or ROAS target will allow you to control how your campaigns perform by optimizing to your specific goals. And so targets enable you to balance volume and efficiency based on your business needs. And we recommend using them whenever you can. You want to be sure your budget is not capped or limited when you're using bidding targets. Instead, your targets are your lever for controlling spend. All right, question 2, how should I use the bid strategy report? So bid strategy reports are available to help you understand how your automated bidding strategies are performing, including whether they're set up properly or limited in some way. And when there's sufficient data available, you'll be able to see some of the top signals that are being used to optimize your bids at auction time. And signals can include device, location, time of day, language, operating system, customer match lists, etc. And bid strategy reports are also available for portfolio bid strategies. All right, that'll do it. Thanks so much for tuning in to Google Ads Decoded.